Hey everyone, it's Paul Gates,
Hey,
Cruise Planners Getaway Gang, and my partner in crime, Ed Gates. How you doing, bud?
howdy, man. I'm doing great. Thanks again. This is great. Thanks everybody for tuning in for another episode of our news version of our Travel Talk Live.
Yeah, I am excited. And for all of you adoring fans out there who tune in every week and you're like, hey, why didn't you have a show last week? Well, we posted this in our Facebook group, but unfortunately, I had something my wife calls Terminator eye, otherwise known as pink eye, for the first time in my life. Was not fun, was not what I would call camera ready. Nor up to doing a lot of research on the computer last Tuesday. So we're back here for Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. And I'm still, I can't believe it's 2020 and I can't believe it's February. So, go figure.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're feeling a lot better, Paul. We did miss you last week,
Thanks. I missed doing it. So it
yeah.
was,
But I'm glad we were able to do it again this week and start off with a brand new month. Happy February, everybody! It's my birthday month.
yeah, birthday month.
Right. Be celebrating my birthday here in Phoenix, Arizona in a couple weeks. Some of you might be going along on our pub crawl that we do every year.
Sounds fantastic. I can't wait to be there. So,
Yeah. But, if you guys are paying attention to the news at all, one of the biggest travel stories right now is, of course, coronavirus.
yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, and we got a lot to sort of update you on and share with you today about coronavirus. And I'm going to run down with some facts to start, if that sounds good, Ed.
Yeah,
Uh,
give a rundown.
and these numbers are as of February 3rd, so unfortunately have been growing every day. But there are more than 17,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus now. In China alone, and another 183 in 27 other countries. Unfortunately, the outbreak has now killed 362 people. And in the US, there are now 11 confirmed cases. I know there are some here in California, even. And I believe there was at least one in Arizona, Ed, if I remember correct.
Man.
On January 30th, the World Health Organization, known as WHO, you've probably heard that talked about, determined the rapidly spreading outbreak constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, which apparently has its own acronym of PHEIC. It sounds serious because it is serious. In an effort to contain coronavirus, Chinese authorities have suspended air, road, and rail travel in the area around Wuhan and placed restrictions on travel and other activities throughout the entire country. And on our side, the U.S. State Department has issued a level 4, which is the highest level travel advisory, urging people to not travel to any part of China at this time. And that's something that, and you and I talked about this earlier, something that the Chinese Foreign Ministry has called an inappropriate overreaction. But, I get it. They got to look out for their own interests, but it's a serious situation. On our own State Department's official travel advisory page, the agency said people in China should, quote, consider departing using commercial means. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Those are drying up fast.
It's not fair for China to come out and call out America after they shut down basically everything
I know,
themselves.
I know, but
So
it's
it's a
what
little
they,
bit of political double talk there.
it's
I mean, it is a very serious situation that we need to keep abreast of.
it is. You're right, and it's. I'd rather leave politics out of it, and we don't need it from either side. But and
Right.
there's been some in the issue from both sides. A couple more things, just general facts. The U.S. government has also requested all non-essential personnel defer travel to China due to the outbreak, and the U.S. government has declared a public health emergency. As of Sunday evening, entry
That's not
into the U.S. has been temporarily barred for any foreign nationals other than immediate family of U.S. citizens and permanent residents who have traveled in China anytime in the last 2 weeks. So that's, a pretty big thing there. Department of Homeland Security has started rerouting all incoming flights and American passengers on board through one of 8 approved airports, which are Atlanta, DFW, Detroit, Newark, Honolulu, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. I think they actually added three more to the list today. So Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is the infectious diseases chief at the National Institutes of Health, said one reason the U.S. stepped up its quarantine measures was an alarming report from Germany that a traveler from China had spread the virus despite showing no symptoms. He contrasted it with the response to recent outbreaks of Ebola, which can't be spread unless someone is very ill. So that's concerning. And so the other and the other concerning thing is that federal health authorities were recognizing that the test they're using to detect the virus isn't always dependable. They said that it was used on some of the people currently in isolation. They test positive one day and negative another day. So, I mean, not to spread panic here, because I don't want to be like the mainstream media and you know the press and just they love panic. You know, it sells. But it is a serious situation, and it's something that we should keep our eye on. So.
Well, it's serious for a specific reason, and that's because many businesses and economies are going to suffer.
Yes.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's affecting the air travel real quick. Effective last Friday, American Airlines suspended all flights to mainland China. Flights to Hong Kong are still in effect as of right now, but that might change. And Delta announced, along with United, they are both suspending their mainland China flights as of this upcoming Thursday, February 6th. The carriers said they are continuing flights until those dates in order to make sure customers and crew have the option to return home. Delta plans to resume China service April 30th, while American and United had set resumption dates of March 28th. Now we all know it's subject to change, based on the condition of the current outbreak. But along with airline travel, I read a report the other day that Starbucks has closed all of their stores in mainland China. So, and that's a big chunk. That's almost a third of Starbucks business. So their business is going down. And a lot of other service-based businesses are doing the same thing, closing their doors, shutting down service to mainland China to try to contain this outbreak. And yes. So we need to, keep an eye on the economic impact that this has as well. One other airline, British Airways, previously reported it suspended all flights to and from Beijing and Shanghai, and it was originally in effect through January 31st, but as I mentioned, due to the condition of the outbreak, that's been extended to the end of February now. So in addition to airlines and fast food and things like that, I mean, you've probably noticed in the stock market, the headlines too, stocks are falling around the world because of this thing. Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it's affecting cruise travel?
Sure. Well, and I'm sure a lot of you heard this story last week that I'll lead with into this. It was last Thursday. Costa Cruises, it's actually a subsidiary of the Carnival Corporation. They don't really sail in our neck of the woods, but mostly in Europe. Their ship, the Costa Smeralda, was locked down and prevented passengers from disembarking in Rome due to a suspected case of coronavirus. Oh my God. But the good news was that passenger was found to just have the flu, and the ship has since been cleared to resume cruising. So that was all the news last week. The good news was that was a false flag there. But several cruise lines, including Crystal, Seabourn, and Royal Caribbean, have already canceled calls in various cities throughout China and Hong Kong. And cruise lines have suspended crew movements from mainland China and will deny boarding to any individual, whether guest or crew, who has traveled from or through mainland China within the previous 14 days. So they are taking steps, obviously, by canceling the cruises and keeping, crew from moving around from mainland China onto the ships. And a point that I like to make, one of our trade organizations, which is called CLIA, Cruise Lines International Association, they represent the cruise lines and interface with travel agents and such. They point out, and this is their quote, "The cruise industry is one of the most well-equipped and experienced when it comes to managing and monitoring health conditions of passengers and crew. Cruise lines take precautions to conduct passive as well as active screening of passengers and crew for illness prior to boarding when circumstances demand. And circumstances always demand. If you've ever been on a cruise, you've filled out a form before you got on that ship. You've had to answer if you've had a cold, if you've had the flu, you've been sick, anything. They don't want that on board, and they do make efforts to, because it's no different than being on mainland. You're not going to get the stomach flu or the regular flu or the cold just because you go on a cruise. It's just a matter of people are in closer quarters, and the cruise lines work hard to make sure that doesn't happen. So, but if you had a trip planned on a cruise to China in the next couple months, it's probably not going to happen, unfortunately. So,
unfortunately, too, we were just talking about this a couple months ago, right before the end of the year, how much travel to China and Asia in general has just skyrocketed over the last couple.
It's been hot.
Literally one of the hottest spots to visit right now. So yeah, you can bet there's a lot of people that are having their travel plans interrupted, especially in such a prime season as the winter and early spring.
Well, you pointed out to me too, because you asked me what you pointed out that, and I don't remember the exact specifics, that a certain cruise line was offering X amount, like a full refund plus and you asked me if I would do it, and the thing is, it's not just like your average cruise to the Bahamas. It could be the trip of a lifetime for some people, or certainly not something that most people are doing all the time, and it's not apples to apples. So, I would probably just take the refund and try again another day. And
I don't know, because it's tough. You've got to take off when you're traveling halfway across the world. You've got to take a lot of time off work and things like that. So, I understand it.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
let's move off of coronavirus so we don't have too much depression and talk about some other news. What you got, Ed?
Well, it's scary, so we
no, absolutely. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but
exactly. It's what's dominating the headlines right now. But there are some more travel-related things that are upon us. I'm going to start off though with a big news item right now. Brexit finally happened. It's finally upon us.
Wow.
And here's what it could mean for travelers, because I'm sure people were wondering, how is this going to affect my travel to Great Britain or Scotland or anything like that. Brexit is finally upon us, and England formally withdrew from the European Union as of midnight, January 31st in Great Britain. Now England goes into what's called a 11-month transition period or implementation period. Britain will continue to follow all the EU's rules, and its trading relationship will remain the same until it hammers out trade agreements within the 27 nations that are still part of the EU. The good news is travel between the UK and the rest of Europe remains exactly as it is until December 31st, 2020. Bad news is, if England and the EU cannot come to an agreement at the end of its transition period this year, and the way it looks right now, it's going to be very, very difficult. It could be a nightmare for travelers. Tourists might have to use different lines at airports and cruise terminals to gain access to the country. If you plan on visiting England using a ferry or crossing the Channel, you're going to have to, you might need an international driving permit. Whereas before, your EU nation, would work between borders, as well as a special green card sometimes from your insurance agent. Also, check your cell phone provider. Mobile roaming charges are likely to reappear in Europe, so check carefully with their providers to avoid the potential for large unexpected bills. That's not going to be a big deal for us in America, but for British citizens traveling to the EU, they may all of a sudden be roaming and not on their home network anymore. Back to the good news. The dollar is much stronger than the pound going into this now, because it used to be the euro is pretty strong, if not even with the dollar, but now the pound is a little bit weak. That'll benefit travels from the U.S. and Britain. Experts expect to see continued recovery of the pound, but predict continued exchange rate volatility until all these agreements are worked out. And if it doesn't work out, the pound could actually get weaker if they don't come up to an agreement by the end of the year and they go past the deadline. So if you see, the pound could go weak. A weak pound does mean that inbound tourism will likely spike. So even though their dollars not their currency is not doing very well, there will be more people traveling to the British pound or the Britain, taking advantage of the weak British pound. Visit Britain forecasts that spending by inbound tourists will have grown by 9.1% in 2020 to 25 billion pounds, which is about $32 billion, with inbound visits topping 38 million people.
Wow. Well, it sounds like probably if you've got travel plans this year to the UK, nothing's going to change. But I would worry, you definitely need to keep your ear to the ground moving in, the sea. And like I said, like you said, I'm not of the highest confidence that they're going to work something out because they haven't had much luck thus far. And so, in the politically contentious world we live in these days, so, I'm hoping for the best. But the point is, keep your ear to the ground. And I think a lot of, especially going from within the UK and onto Europe and combining that sort of thing. Even like I saw something a couple weeks ago about Italy requiring an international driver's permit. There are things coming around now that you just never had to worry about before. And so that's what we're here for, ask us if you don't know.
Talking about Brexit for 3 years, we've been hearing about it. Now it's finally come to an end. We thought maybe we hear the last of it, but no, this is just the beginning of Brexit. So
I'm sure we'll be talking much more about that. So
right, I know. So we're not done with Brexit yet at all.
No, unfortunately not. But it's good to keep abreast of it. A lot of stuff happening there, and even in our own country with the Real ID, which we'll start hammering away. Our home office started talking about it again. So yeah, a lot to know in 2020, whether it be domestic or international. So
well. Hey, Paul, let's lighten the mood a little bit, all
yeah,
right?
Let's
do it. Doom and gloom, no more politics. Let's talk about something fun.
Well, something fun for me is an Alaska cruise. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing.
And so it's obviously, we've talked a lot about Alaska. It's a hugely popular destination, but it has a very short season in terms of when cruise ships go there. But cruise buffs, they'll start to tell you that, and people that are in the know, that the benefits of cruising in what they call shoulder season are outweighing the times that you might traditionally go to Alaska. So picture experiencing an hour-long private show by a juvenile humpback who had migrated from Hawaii to spend the summer in the nutrient-rich Alaskan waters. This is but one of the incredible experiences that may be had when visiting Alaska in the secret season, in the shoulder season. And when is that? It's in the springtime. So you may know it's traditional to go in June, July, August, but they cruise lines start cruising up there as early as April and May. So the cool thing is not only are the flowers and the plant life coming back from their winter rest as the spring arrives, so are the animals. The state's temperate summer, it's long attracted people going in June, July, August in the high season. But an increased number of travelers are looking to spring as the best time to cruise to Alaska. There'll be cheaper prices, there'll be smaller crowds, plus this blooming springtime flora and the animals awakening as well. Another thing to consider is because of the shorter days in late April, you can still see the northern lights, which I've been up to Alaska a couple times in the summer, and it's just not an option because there's very little night. So you can also experience grizzly bear mamas and their cubs skirting the coastline, bald eagles soaring overhead, humpback whales and orcas breaking the water surface to breathe, puffins, seals, sea lions bobbing in the water, laying out on the rocks, even a wolf on the shoreline feasting on a fresh kill. So all of this wildlife coming back in the spring, coming to life, really. So according to Travel Alaska, cruising is the most popular way to explore the state. Not a surprise, really. And another source called Rain Coast Data predicted that at least almost 1.5 million passengers will sail Alaska waters just this season in 2020, which is already a 6% increase from 2019. So as we said, it's definitely continues to be a hot and growing market. To accommodate that increase, 10 new to Alaska ships will set sail starting this year in the spring. So, and as I mentioned, a great benefit to cruising Alaska in the spring is the savings. We picked one lead-in rate for Holland America for a 7-day Alaska inside passage sailing, round trip from Vancouver on the Volendam. So if you look at April 29th, for instance, it starts at $7.99 per person, which is really a great rate. If you look at the exact same cruise for July 1st specifically, it starts at $10.49 so per person. So for a 2-person cabin, that's already a $500 difference, just considering going in the spring. So it's a great tip, and I read this article last night and I had to include it because we talk a lot about Alaska. A lot of people, it's in their summer vacation and be able to go June, July, August, but it's gotten busier and busier as more and more people go. It's a great tip to consider going very beginning of the season in the springtime. So that's my hot tip for today.
That's great. That's awesome, Paul. I can't wait to go on an Alaska cruise.
I'm ready. I know. Maybe next year we'll have a group. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I think it's pricey, but maybe we could do it in April, like you're talking about, and save some money.
Absolutely. Well, I hear you've got some more cruise news to share.
Absolutely, dude. We've had Encore watch for Norwegian. We've had Mardi Gras watch, but I just found out that there are 24 brand new ships coming out this year alone in 2020. 2020 is huge. That's unprecedented. That's more than they've ever had. I mean, cruising is growing so fast, and there's so many new ships, but there's some neat ones coming out. Now, I talked about the Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is a game changer. Carnival is boosting. He really kind of jumped up a level when they went with Mardi Gras because they hadn't done that yet. They've been remodeling some of the older ships, keeping them on the small. This is the first one that's going to, the size alone is going to compete with the Norwegian Encore and the Royal Caribbean.
All those big Oasis class ships.
Yeah, all those big ones, Oasis class ships. So the Mardi Gras is a real milestone for Carnival. They're going to it's going to be ranked as the industry's 44th largest ship.
No. That's the Panorama. It's
the Panorama.
It's the first time.
Oh, it's going to be one of the largest. It's going to be like top 10, right?
It just shows that Carnival hasn't been in that game before, in the big ship. So
they went from 44th to like close to the top. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's going to be the first ship in the U.S. market powered by liquefied natural gas. So and then it's also has the first roller coaster at sea, which I've talked about endlessly. So that's awesome. And cruise buffs will endlessly debate their favorite ships, lines, onboard amenities, blah blah blah. But people are going nuts about all these new ships. There's a lot of expedition vessels that are going to be launched as well. We'll talk about those a little bit later. Paul's going to talk about one particular cruise line that's adding an entire fleet of expedition vessels. These are smaller, and they carry a smaller amount of people, but they go to more remote areas and some more exotic locations. Two new brands are popping on the market this year too. We talked briefly about Virgin Voyages is coming out. I did that on a previous show. But also Ritz-Carlton is launching their cruise line as well, which is going to be,
I'm anxious to see. I already had somebody ask me about that actually.
Yeah,
so.
People who do Ritz-style travel
brand loyalty
love going on a Ritz-Carlton cruise line, knowing that they have that exact same kind of service and everything that you get at a Ritz-Carlton property on board. So that's going to be an excellent addition to the luxury cruising market. There's also, a lot of them are greener ships too. Some of them are some of the most environmentally advanced ships at sea. Some of the new ones coming out. and it's very, very exciting. Upscale brands such as Crystal and Silversea are adding ships as well to expedition ships. And then one that Paul's going to talk about, we're going to transition right into this. There's going to be 10 expedition ships total in 2020, and a big chunk of them are going to be on Viking. Paul, why don't you tell us about what Viking's doing in 2020?
Yeah, well, we got the exciting announcement in 2020, but something, the expedition travel, it's a growing market segment. It's generally like younger baby boomers. They've got a little bit more wealth, but they want to get out there. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to experience some places that are a little less traveled, but they also want that level of comfort, and so that's kind of who's driving this market. But Viking announced this year, although this won't be going into effect until 2022, but that's right around the corner. We're already booking for these. Yeah, like you said, Viking it's a huge player. They were in river cruises. They still dominate river cruises. Then they got into ocean cruises. And I had a meeting with my local Viking representative, and they've got a lot of ships, way more than I ever imagined. It's a very big company, and but they still feel like intimate, and they have a very distinct way of looking at experiential travel. And it's not just going somewhere. It's very interwoven. The experiences are very interwoven. So they're launching 2 new ships actually in 2022. I have the wrong date on my notes, so I didn't mean to. Okay. Yeah, it's my fault. I got so excited because they just announced it in 2020 and we're already booking. The ships are coming in 2022. The Viking Octantis and the Viking Polaris. They'll both have 378 passenger capacities. They're going to sail to, get this, Antarctica, the U.S. Great Lakes, and the Svalbard region of the Arctic. So they're really going for these, and they're they're reinforced for ice and that sort of thing. So both ships, and I thought this was fascinating, both of those ships will do double duty as cruise ships and research vessels. Viking said it will host researchers and scientists via partnerships with NOAA and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, among others. Scientists will conduct field work on the ships and interact with passengers. And in fact, there'll be a 430 square foot space called the laboratory, and it'll be, quote, designed to support a broad range of research activities, and guests will have supervised access to the area. How cool is that? Sounds amazing. It is. The ships will boast an industry first, which is an in-ship marina, enabling the launch of small excursion craft to the ship's multiple shell doors, including an 85-foot slipway that enables guests to embark rigid inflatable boats from a stable interior surface. So they'll carry Zodiac craft, kayaks, and 2 6-passenger submersibles. We started to hear about these submersibles here pretty recently.
Yeah.
Seedic was one that had them. So each passenger will be provided a Viking expedition kit with boots, binoculars, and waterproof pants. They'll have access to satellite phones because obviously they don't have cell phone service in Antarctica, VHF radios, and excursion gear like trekking poles and snowshoes. So, I mean, this is the real deal. And the cabins themselves will start at 222 square feet, but the top accommodation is, get this, 1,223 square foot owner suite with a living room, 6-seat dining table, 800 square foot private garden, and traditional Norwegian wood-sided hot tub. So these are, I mean, this is crazy. This is a beautiful ship. It's a small ship. It gets you in the action, but the comfort level is really high. So yeah, and I didn't mean to get your hopes up. They're not sailing for 2 more years, almost a little less than 2 years. But if you're interested, we can get you booked now, and I'm guarantee you they'll book. They're going to be booked up fast. So if you want to go in 2022, now is the time to be thinking about it. And what an amazing journey that would be. So
well, let me just tell you a little bit more about expedition vessels. I mean, these things are unprecedented, these smaller ships. I mean, there's not been a market for this before. Like I said, there's 10 of them that are going to be being built in 2020 that are making their premiere with various cruise lines. And this market's being fueled by the surge of younger baby boomers who are
Yeah.
experiencing the travel craze, but are older now and finding cruise ships to be easy, comfortable. And these are active seniors. I mean, these
Yeah.
people want to get out there and
Exactly.
upscale brands, like I mentioned, like Crystal, Silver Seas, and others are adding ships also, and they're eyeing destinations like the Galapagos Islands,
Yeah.
the Arctic regions, and the Amazon River, and other fascinating places that you probably have always dreamed about going. Now we have expedition ships. And Paul, that's amazing about Viking.
This isn't your grandfather's cruise.
This is a
It
whole
really
new style of cruising that we're excited about.
Exactly. I'm
Well,
stoked. Well, speaking
speaking
of
of
grandfather's
grandfather,
cruise, exactly. You read my mind.
that's right. I've got a great story about the oldest cruise ship on the seas right now, and it's amazingly enough, it's the one that just set sail last month out of Rocky Point. We call it Rocky Point here in Arizona. It's Puerto Penasco, Mexico, at Rocky Point, and it's a growing resort town. And they've just started trying to attract. They've been building a pier there, a harbor for cruise ships for quite a long time. It started and stopped and everything. Well, they first got their first cruise just last month, their first major cruise line. On January 9th, 2020, the MV Astoria, currently operating under the British company Cruise Maritime Voyages, made the first of three 11-day sailings from Puerto Penasco, Mexico, also known as Rocky Point. Rocky Point has been growing rapidly as a resort town, and this was the first time a major cruise ship operated in Puerto Penasco.
Awesome.
The MV Astoria is the oldest cruise ship currently sailing, and Cruise and Maritime Voyages embraces the story of its vintage vessel. It even offers lectures on board and have a ship historian on board talking about the fascinating past of the Astoria. The story of this thing, it was commissioned by the Swedish American Line in 1944. The ship originally was named the MS Stockholm, and it was one of the largest ocean liners built in Sweden at the time. It made its maiden voyage on February 21st, which is coming up, 1948, sailing from Gothenburg to New York.
Wow.
On July 25th, 1956, the Stockholm left New York for Gothenburg, and along the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts, it encountered some thick fog and ended up colliding with the Andrea Doria, an Italian ship.
Oh, yeah.
Being built as an ice-cutting ship, the Stockholm sliced nearly all the way through the Andrea Doria. The wreck killed 46 people instantly on the Doria and 5 crew members on the Stockholm.
I remember hearing about reading stories.
A nearby ship changed course to help rescue the passengers and saved 753 passengers from the Andrea Doria before the ship sank. Amazingly enough, the Stockholm, as badly damaged as it was staying afloat, and it was able to rescue another 500 passengers from the Doria. Wow. In the 60s, the Stockholm was rebuilt, and it was sold to the East German government and renamed Völkerfreundschaft, or Friendship Between Nations. The Communist Party used the ship to give leisure cruises to party officials, sailing the Baltic Sea as well as Cuba. To prevent defections, cruise passengers were forbidden from traveling with their entire families. However, when cruising Western waters, it was not uncommon for the ship to lose defectors fleeing to find freedom in other nations. By the mid-1980s, the ship was taken out of service and renamed Volker. In 1986, the Swedish government needed a ship to house an influx of refugees from Pakistan, Iran, and Syria who were seeking asylum. The Swedish government chartered the ship, had it towed to Oslo, and renamed it Fridtjof Nansen, after the Norwegian explorer. In 1994, the equivalent of 150 million euros was spent to renovate the ship from top to bottom. In 2008, the ship, now called the MS Athena, was attacked by pirates in the Gulf of Aden off the coast of Somalia. In 2015, Cruise and Maritime Voyages contracted the ship for their use. In January 2020, the cruise line said that it would not renew the contract, and 2020 would be the ship's farewell season after completing sailings from England to Iceland, Scotland, Norway, and the Baltics.
That's incredible. This sounds like it should be on CBS this morning. Because who hasn't heard of the Andrea Doria catastrophe and all of this other incredible history? I mean, we're talking like it was ordered during World War II. Like that, it just blows my mind. And it's still, well, and it's kind of sad that it may not be for much longer. But I mean, that is absolutely incredible. I had not seen this story, and I'm blown away by this. So,
well, it had a good run. I'm glad it made history on several fronts, especially being the first sail of the Gulf of Mexico out of Puerto Penasco. And it's just a neat storied ship with lots of history. I mean, being attacked by pirates, Somali pirates.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, I just have one more. I can't compare with that story. Mine's a much lighter story to end the show today, and it's more cruise news. It seemed like most of the news this month was about coronavirus or cruising.
Take us away. Put a boat drink in our hand and tell us all about travel and put some dreams in our head.
I'll plant this seed in your head, and you can start to imagine this. In fact, I think we have some clients going next month to this very destination. Royal Caribbean has debuted the Coco Beach Club with floating cabanas in the Bahamas at their perfect day at Coco Cay. So they've officially opened the Coco Beach Club, and the opening marks the completion of the $250 million transformation and just the first phase of their changes at Perfect Day at Coco Cay. So let me tell you all about this beach club. It sounds incredible. It has an oceanfront infinity pool, beach cabanas, and a dedicated restaurant and a bar. It's got 2 refreshed beaches, and those beaches themselves are open to all people on the island. The 20 floating cabanas are the first of their kind in the Bahamas. Each floating cabana features a private slide into the ocean, an overwater hammock, a dining area, freshwater shower, and a wet bar. There are also 10 beach cabanas, and all cabanas in the Coco Beach Club accommodate up to 8 guests and feature loungers, a dining area, charging outlets, a mini fridge, snorkel gear, and a dedicated cabana attendant, or as Steph and Jill would call them, their cabana boy. They've had one of these before, who can serve drinks and refreshments. That's incredible. The clubhouse is the center of social activity with a bar serving specialty cocktails and a 2,600 square foot oceanfront infinity pool with in-pool loungers, day beds, and poolside service. And the exclusive restaurant, which is complimentary and only for beach club guests, serves an elevated menu that features fresh lobster, grouper, and steak, plus salads, fruits, and starters. And the good news is there are 16 different Royal Caribbean ships that are visiting Coco Cay or Coco Key in this year of 2020. So if you are wanting to go and partake in this Coco Beach Club with these incredible amenities, this is your year to do it. Let's make it happen, because I'm already dreaming about being in one of those overwater cabanas.
I'm always dreaming about being in a cabana.
Amen, brother. Amen to that.
That's the life right there.
That was the image I wanted to plant in our viewers' heads as we closed up today.
That's perfect. You know, I had a friend of mine comment the other day how he was excited because he read about something he didn't know about. And of course, you and I have heard about it, Paul, that there's a lot of senior citizens who basically retire on a cruise ship and they spend their entire years cruising. They don't, So, if you're ever interested in that, give us a call. We can definitely hook you up with a year-long cruise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just watched it. Well, and there is one company that in particular comes to mind, and that's Holland America. And in fact, and I was hearing too, I watched the presentation just last week. They do a round the world cruise that lasts like 5 or 6 months every year. And the presenter was even saying that there were like 4 or 5 groups of children that were on there being homeschooled and experiencing that. So it's not just for people who are like 80 years old, It would be an amazing experience. So
Lots of opportunity out there to live on the sea or experience life on the sea.
well, next week
So
we're going to be back with another episode, and we're going to talk about wave season. You may have heard about wave season before. You may have not heard about wave season, but this is wave season. We're in the middle of it. We're going to talk about it, and I'm going to dig up a bunch of deals that I want to highlight and that you can get right now to book your trip for 2020, because this is the time to get all the best goodies from cruise lines and even some resorts. So I'm excited.
well, I hope we kept you guys entertained and informed. Thanks again for watching, and give us a like here on YouTube or on Facebook. Send us a like. Comment down below. We always take your comments, your questions. We will answer them on our future show. If you've got any questions at all about any of the news items today, if you need an answer quicker than waiting for a few weeks, give us a call or send us a private message or leave something in the comments. Say you need an urgent reply, and we'll get right back to you. We're here to help you guys plan your perfect vacations, and we love doing it. So
Absolutely.
Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
That's right. And don't forget to subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. We'd appreciate it.
That's right.
Bye, guys. We'll see you later.
Take care.